I'm Jessica.
I'm Emmalynn.
And in today's video we are going to be talking about all the books we read for the month of February. Almost said March.
This felt like a whole month already.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started with a digital book that I read on Kindle Unlimited, which is Glow of the Everflame, the second book in the Kindred's Curse series. So I bought the physical copy of Spark of the Everflame. I liked it okay. It wasn't like amazing. It wasn't bad. It was just mid. But it ended on a major cliffhanger, and so I wanted to know like what happened after that, and then I just kept reading. So the thing about this series, I don't know if you know this or not. So the first book was like 350 pages or so. The second book was like over 600. The third book is over 1,000.
Is she getting paid by the page?
I don't know, but I'm like, good lord, I don't want to own these because it would take up so much room, but two, like, am I going to keep going with this? Anyways, I can't really say a whole lot about the second book because obviously it's a second book. But I did like it more than the first one. I did feel like the pacing was a lot more fast than the first one. The first one was very slow until the end. So I did appreciate that. It is a lot higher stakes. There's like a game competition element in the book that was interesting. So yeah, I did like this book better. I think I gave the first one maybe 3 stars, and I would give this one like probably, I would just say 4 stars.
Okay, my first book was also digital, and that was From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough.
Yeah.
I like half and half listened to this one and read it physically. I would say if you can handle audiobooks, like if you can pay attention, that's better because it has audio files of Lisa Marie speaking because she has passed.
Who's that? So is Riley the narrator?
Riley has her own thing. Oh my gosh, who is it that does the Lisa Marie? It wasn't Sandra Bullock. It was Julia Roberts, I think.
Oh, really?
Did hers.
I think I do remember hearing that.
But it was really good. It definitely jumps around a little timeline-wise, so also, like, if you don't listen to audiobooks a lot, that might be hard. But, I mean, I don't really like to rate audiobooks, especially, like, their life was so tragic in so many ways. So, that's just like, oh, your trauma wasn't entertaining enough for me. That's just wrong, in my opinion. But I thought it was well done and respectful towards Lisa Marie. And can I just say, Priscilla's crazy. I never really knew that.
Leads me to my second book I read. And I did read and listen to this kind of the same as she did. But this is The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. This is, if you don't know, Sherry Frankie is the oldest daughter of the Frankie family that was the viral, and not Instagram, YouTube famous 8 Passengers family. And if you don't know, her mother is now in jail for child abuse.
Up to 30 years, I think.
Yeah. And so this is her story about everything she endured from, you know, as little as she can remember to the last days of her time living at home, and then up until her mother's trial and things like that. It was very sad, obviously, which I knew it was going to be because I also listened to the podcast about Ruby Frankie. So I kind of knew like some things that were coming, but it was still really sad to hear it from her perspective instead of just, you know, as like strictly factual perspective. But also, if you don't know, there's now a show on Hulu about all of this. And one thing that I find interesting but also sad, like we were talking about this watching the show, In the book, she doesn't name any of her younger siblings. It's just her and her older brother Chad are the only siblings that Chad is the only sibling she calls by name. The rest she just says my younger sibling, my younger sister, whatever, because they're really trying to keep the little kids' privacy still, even though a lot of it's already been taken from them because of the YouTube channel. But, yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like, I don't, like we said, usually rate nonfiction books, but I did thoroughly enjoy this. I thought she was very respectful still of her mom, despite all of the hardships that she put her through. She didn't ever, like, degrade her or anything. It was just like, this is my experience and this is the repercussions of what I'm having to endure because of it, and like things that she went through that you don't learn in the podcast, you learn about from her perspective. That was incredibly sad. But yeah, I would definitely recommend picking this up before you watch the show, because I feel like the show is kind of just skimming over the broader things, like the larger things that happen, and this is kind of more in the details, but I did really enjoy it.
Okay, next up, I picked up Beach Read, finally, so now I've read all of Emily Henry's books. I'd say this is like a 4 or 4.5 star. It didn't give me the 5-star feelings, but I did really love it. I love the setting, and now I want to go back and read Happy Place, because I remember there being like cameos and mentions of January and Gus and like the bookstore in Happy Place, but I didn't really appreciate it to the fullest since I hadn't read this yet. Yeah. And if you don't know, this is about Gus, who is a literary fiction author, and January, who is a romance author, and they're both kind of in a reading rut, and they decide, well, they kind of make a bet that like the other can't write their genre, and so they decide that January will write literary fiction and he will try to write a rom-com. So they take each other out like on these little excursions to try to build their novel from and kind of immerse themselves in. And it's much more than that. This book is honestly really sad, so don't be fooled. Which all of Emily Henry books are kind of sad, but this one was especially sad in my opinion.
Okay, I'm just going to briefly mention this. This is a book that we read for school, Rifles for Wadey. It's about a young boy who lives in Kansas during the Civil War, and he decides to enlist in the Army as a Union soldier, mainly because of the Cherokee Indian rebels that are invading the Kansas area. And so you kind of see him go about his daily life as a soldier in the Union Army, but eventually he gets himself into a situation where he ends up being a spy. So he's like living in the Confederate camp as a Union soldier. So that was really interesting because he starts kind of like empathizing with the Confederate soldiers, because he realizes that like they're just men too, doing what they think is best, and he looks at them more as, individuals than just a group of soldiers. I liked this okay. I liked the ending got more fast-paced because of him being in the rebel camp, so that part was more interesting. But yeah, I would think, I don't have sons, but I would think like upper elementary, middle school boys would really like this book, because it's about a young boy being a soldier. So book I picked up digitally was Pictures of You by Emma Gray. This is about a girl who wakes up in the hospital from an accident and finds out that she was married. Her husband died in the car accident, but she has no recollection of her life after she was like 16 or 17 years old. So everything that happened since then, meeting her husband, marrying him, her career, everything, she doesn't remember. So she has to go on this journey to like rediscover who she is. She questions a lot of the decisions that she's made in her life and how she's ended up in the place of life she is. She's like ended relationships with people she never thought she would end relationships with. So it's like kind of a cliche plot for a book, I realize. Like, going in, you just think, oh, there's this girl, she has memory loss because she was in an accident. Like, I feel like there's a million books out there like that, but this book is a lot deeper because you realize she's suppressing her memories for a reason. I really enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the deeper undertones that were kind of like, it's kind of like an onion being peeled away slowly. Like, you start seeing why she can't remember her memory, or why she's suppressing her memories, and what she's going to do with that information once she remembers it. So I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a book that I thought going in was just going to be like a cliche, you know, she has memory loss, she tries to get her memories back, but it really is much deeper than that. And so I appreciated how the author kind of like revealed that as the book went on. So I would probably give it like a 4.25, and I would highly recommend reading it.
Okay. My next book is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, and this follows Ivy Bennett, and you also follow a few of the other girls in this book. Like, they each kind of get a chapter, which I thought was interesting. But anyways, you follow Ivy Bennett, and this is set in like high society, Regency England, but there are fae in this world. Specifically, if I'm understanding right, there was some confusion with the world building for me personally. It's kind of like The Cruel Prince, how there's like the fae realm, but England currently has a fae queen, and I believe she's the only fae in the world right now. But every debutante season, the girls get to go see the queen, and they ask for a bargain. So some people will be like, I want my hair to be this color, I wish I was taller, I wish my teeth were more perfect, and she gives that to them in exchange for something else. So sometimes they'll be like, I have no fingernails now, I have, like, some of my toes were cut off, like random things. Or someone is like, I want to know when someone's lying to me, so then they can never tell a lie. Which I think is a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
I liked that it leaned more into like the darkness of fae rather than like purely romanticizing them. Everyone definitely has a fascination with them, but also the fascination is kind of fear-based, which is interesting. And what it doesn't tell you much in the synopsis, it just says free her older sister from the bargain that destroyed her. So Ivy also has an older sister, and ever since she made a bargain, she's been like a completely different person. She went missing for like a year, came back, and she's just like kind of barely alive, like doesn't really have much of a personality anymore, and no one even remembers or knows the bargain she made. So they don't know if it has to do with that. They don't know if she was kidnapped. And so with Ivy's debutante season, she also kind of is vowing to figure out what happened to her sister. And there's a twist on this season this year where it's also a competition to marry the queen's son. And whoever doesn't get picked can never marry anyone for the rest of their life. And so it's pretty high stakes.
Yeah.
But very interesting. I'm glad there's going to be a second book. I honestly wish it was kind of longer. I feel like the pacing was a little odd at times, but overall I enjoyed it. It got me out of my reading slump, so I give it like a 4-star.
Okay, the next book I read was one of my highly anticipated books of the year, and that is Rebel Witch, the second book and final book in the Crimson Moth duology. I can't say a whole lot about the plot, but I will say this book does pick up right where not Rebel Witch. What is the first one called? it's not called
Heartless Hunter.
Heartless Hunter left off. And the thing about this book is that was disappointing to me. I felt like it was extremely predictable. You learn right at the beginning of this book that there's this secret, kind of like, it's like a secret but also a mystery, I guess, that needs to be solved. And you can tell within, like, as soon as they're revealing the mystery, what the answer is. Like, it's like, oh, gee, I wonder what it's gonna be. And then you get to that, and of course it's the same. And then, I don't know, I just felt like it was very predictable. Also, Rune kind of got on my nerves in this book. I feel like she was very wishy-washy, like, oh, I'm a witch on one hand. Oh, I can't do anything. Everything's so hard and, like, scary. And she was kind of, like, putting herself in really dumb situations. Like, also, I'm like, if you're a witch, why can't you just... It's like she's a witch, but she doesn't have many powers or, like, know many spells. And I'm like, why have you not educated yourself more? Why can't you do more? I don't know. She just kind of got on my nerves. Maybe that's just a me problem. I don't know. I really liked the first book. I think I gave it 5 stars. This book, I would say, was maybe, like, a 3.5 at best.
So I read The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center, and this is kind of a similar plot to Beach Read, but they're screenwriters. So Emma has always dreamed of being a screenwriter, but there was an accident, and her mom passed away, and her dad has had extreme health problems since then, and so she kind of sacrifices her career and everything just to basically be on 24-hour care for her dad until her sister finishes, I believe it's nursing school. So then she gets a call from her agent, who was her ex-boyfriend, which is just so funny. And he's like, I really need your help. The Charlie Yates, he's like the screenwriter, has to write a romance movie, and it's the worst script I've ever read. But he's known to have, like, kind of an ego, and so she has to tread lightly of how to help him and, like, act like it's not absolute garbage when it's, like, one of the worst things she's ever read. So she feels very conflicted whether to go to LA or not because of her dad, but her sister's like, it's okay, you know, you've taken care of him for years. I can have a turn. So she flies out, and the agent didn't tell Charlie that she was going to be helping him, and so immediately he's like, you're not helping me, you're just like a failed screenwriter, you've never done anything, like, you're not doing that. And then they kind of make a deal that she's just gonna read it, tell him what she thinks is wrong with it, and then she'll leave. And she just totally hits him with it, and he's like, oh, okay, you know what you're talking about. So then they just spend months writing this screenplay, and it has lots of good side characters and different things, in my opinion. It didn't bother me too much. They talked about a lot of famous actors and actresses and stuff, which, like, you're in LA, like, I feel like that adds to it. And, like, her utter shock of him knowing famous people was really entertaining. Like, she didn't think about the fact that to be a screenwriter, you might have to be around actors. So, just very entertaining. I liked the romance a lot. I thought it progressed well. I thought the pacing was good. I'd say I'd honestly probably give this a 5 star. I think the miscommunication went on for a little too long, but that's just me personally. Every time I would think about, like, where to rate it, I just realized that Catherine Center just writes really human-like characters, and any problem I have with them are problems I probably have with myself. So 5 stars for me.
This book, Very Sincerely Yours by Carrie Winfrey, I picked up after DNFing another book in our reading romance vlog. I can't even remember what the book was called. That's how unmemorable it was. So I was wanting and hoping this would be like a reset for my brain, and my expectations, and this book was so cute. It's about a girl named Teddy who works at a vintage toy store, and she has just been dumped by her longtime boyfriend, and her guilty pleasure in life is watching this children's show, which is basically like the equivalent of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And it's called Everett's Place, and obviously the main guy, his name is Everett, and she's kind of like not in love with him, but like she finds him really soothing, and like she really admires his character. And so she decides, like, oh, he can give little kids advice who are writing into him, asking him questions. I'm going to email him and, like, ask him what I should do with my life. And so she does, and she doesn't expect him to write back, but obviously he does. And we kind of begin, like, a little You've Got Mail situation where he eventually, like, realizes who she is, but he doesn't. And it's just, it's really, really cute. It's nothing like, oh, my bookmark is in there. It's nothing like earth-shattering, you know. It's not like something I would probably think about. I don't know if I would say never again, but it is really cute. And so if you're just looking for something that's like a palate cleanser, something to kind of get you out of a slump, I would say this would do it, because it also has like their email transcripts. So that makes it go by really quickly. And I thought that the pacing was really cute. There wasn't anything like, you know, I mean, you know how in romances there's always like that thing that comes as like, what's the problem? They always have a problem that they have to overcome. I didn't feel like that was like drug out, you know, for an annoying amount of time. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I would say it was probably like a solid 3.5. Actually, I've been reading this for over a month. I think I started this at the end of January. And that is The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. This book was so beautiful, but so sad. The ending literally wrecked me. I feel like when I shut the book, I felt like I needed to just sit there and recover from how it ended and like digest it, because it wasn't the ending that I wanted, but I feel like it was the ending that was necessary to complete the story. And it was like I knew it was coming, but I didn't want it to be true. But this book follows a couple named Jack and Mabel who live in the wilderness in Alaska. They like decided to move to Alaska, like homestead in the wilderness, after they had a devastating loss where they used to live. And so they kind of moved there to like start all over. And one day it snows and they decide to build a snow girl, a little snow girl out of the snow and a scarf. And the next day the wife wakes up and the snow child is gone. And then the husband gets like a glimpse of a little girl running in the woods and is like, it looks like she has on the scarf that we put on the snowman, like what is going on? And so there's like this big mystery surrounding this little girl. They tell their friends that they've seen a little girl in the woods and they think they're going crazy and that it's like the winter catching up to them and like the winter blues. And so it's like this very fairy tale-esque type of story. It's very lyrical. It's really, really, really well written. I want to read everything that she has written out, and I think I own everything that she has written out. I definitely recommend not only this book but her other books as well, because her writing was just absolutely beautiful and stunning. And I would give this 5 stars, even though it wasn't the ending I would have chose, but it was the ending the book needed. So there's that.
Next up, I read the Emma M. Lyon Journals Volume 5. There's only 8 out right now, so I'm catching up, and I don't know how I feel about it, but this might have been one of my favorites yet. I I've talked about these so many times, but they're all on Kindle Unlimited, and they range from like 125 pages to, I think the one that just came out is almost like, most recent one is like 330 pages. So they kind of like progress, which I like. And these are kind of similar to like the Guernsey literary book because it is journal format. And so she'll like, it'll say, January 2nd, she'll be like, I just came home from a ball, let me tell you about it. And she's like, I can't remember what we said here. Like, it's like she's talking to you the whole time. Down to like the acknowledgments and author's notes is like Emma Emmalynn talking to you. And it's really, really endearing. And this just follows Emma in 1883, and she's just moved back to her London neighborhood after her parents have passed away, and she's kind of waiting to become of age, trying to figure out like how to get a job as a woman of society. And she also doesn't live up to society standards. Her best friends are these 3 guys that she just hangs out with all the time. One is the vicar, one is her tenant next door, and then one is the Duke. And it's just very entertaining how the men have become friends and like their connections to each other. It's just so realistic how they'll talk about something and be like, oh, you know who that is too. And it's just very Jane Austen like, with kind of like if Anne of Green Gables was a Jane Austen character is how it feels. So I love those.
Okay, the last book I read this month, aside from the one we both read, is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibáñez. And I decided to buy this kind of on a whim because I kept hearing people talk about how it was like giving the mummy vibes, which part of my entire childhood I feel like stems around the Mummy. My mom used to watch those movies all the time. Like, my mom has certain movies that she just turns on for like background, and the Mummy series saga was definitely one of them. So I was like, oh, this sounds like it would be cool. And I don't feel like there are many books with this type of setting. So that really intrigued me. But this follows a girl named Inez, and she lives in Argentina with her aunt and 2 cousins because her parents are always off in Egypt on these like expeditions, trying to excavate different tombs and historical sites. So she lives with them. She doesn't really understand why her parents are so set on being in Egypt all the time, and she's kind of jealous of Egypt because it just kind of consumes them, and then she's just there in Argentina with her cousins and her aunt trying to become like a lady of society. And right at the beginning of the book, she gets a letter saying that both of her parents have been killed or died, and so she decides, her uncle is now her guardian, and he's back in Egypt also. So she decides that she is going to run away to Egypt. So she like fakes being a widow to like be an excuse for her traveling without a chaperone, and like makes it to Egypt on a boat by herself. And then she gets there, and this guy picks her up at the docks and is like, oh, my uncle sent you, he bought you a ticket for the next boat, you're going back. And like her uncle doesn't want to have anything to do with her, it seems like. He just wants to get rid of her. And she's like, no, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here, and I'm finding out what happened to my parents. So a lot of the book is like her trying to discover what really happened to her parents. But she's also really drawn to like the archaeological sites as well, like her parents. So she tries to make herself useful. And then her uncle's assistant, what is his name? What is it? Whit. Yes, Whitford. There kind of starts being like this friendship turned into romance between him and her. He's kind of like made to babysit her while she's in Egypt, and so they have like a really funny dynamic because he's always trying to get rid of her. She's always kind of trying to like win him over to her side and be like, yeah, don't you think I should get to stay here and figure out what happened to my parents? So there's this mystery element, there's this romance, there's a lot going on. However, I feel like it was a little slow until probably the last 30% of the book when things really amp up, and this ends on a massive cliffhanger. So if you do decide to read this, you need to have the second one like ready to pick up, because I've already read the prologue of the other book to see what, like, I had to know what happened. So if you're interested in like Egyptian archaeology, Egyptian history, I think I thought it was like really a fun thing to explore. There is like a magical element as well, so I guess this would be considered fantasy in that aspect, but it's like a very minor background. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It wasn't like super amazing, but I would read the second book, so that's enough to make me want to continue the duology or series. I don't know how many is in it, but yeah, I would give this like a 3.75.
So, we gave in. We had to read it. We had to know.
I had that on hold forever at the library.
So this is the favorites, and this is about two figure skaters, Katarina Shaw and Heath Roca, and they've been friends since childhood, so much so that her dad became guardian, like claimed guardianship of Heath because he was an orphan, and they've just grown up together, and since she was about 4 years old, she's always dreamed of going to the Olympics. And so we go back and we see some things from their childhood, but we follow their ice skating journey and their toxic romance.
And basically, Heath becomes a skater as well.
Yeah.
Well, he played hockey, right? I think.
Yes.
But he became a figure skater, an ice dancer for her because he knew how much it meant to her. So he even kind of like gave it into something he wouldn't normally be interested in because of her.
But this does, after every chapter, there is interview format like Daisy Jones and the Six, and I believe it is now confirmed that this is a Wuthering Heights retelling.
Yeah, it is. Because
I know lots of people say that.
Her name is Catherine, and his name is Heathcliff. Okay. So, Cat.
I don't.
Yeah.
And
Heath is an orphan. Heathcliff is an orphan.
Well, if you're a fan of Wuthering Heights, here you go. I absolutely ate this book up. It's hard to say that I loved it because, like, I loved the experience of reading it. I thought it was very well done, but because, like Daisy Jones and the Six, it was so realistic, I, like, don't feel like I can even say I love it.
At various points, more often than not, you don't really like anybody.
Yeah, which is how I felt about Daisy Jones and the Six, except, Camilla, isn't that Billy's wife's name?
Yes.
Yeah, felt so sorry for her. Anyways, I don't even know, like, what else to say about this. I feel like reading experience-wise, writing-wise, I think this is a 5-star just because I'm so impressed. If you love Taylor Jenkins Reid, you've read all her books, I would highly suggest picking this up because Daisy Jones and the Six is one of my favorite books of all time. And it gave me the feeling of reading that. And I just loved the setting of ice skating and stuff. I feel like there's not many books about that. And if it is, it's like part romance. Like it's just like kind of their hobby. Not to this extent to where it's like their job, an absolute obsession. Yeah. It was wild.
It's also just too kind of the story of like what you're willing to sacrifice to fulfill your dream.
Yeah. To get what you want. So many things. There's so much.
But I highly recommend, like, while you're reading this, okay, first of all, there's lots of Spotify playlists that go along with this book. But second of all, you should go on Instagram and look up reels of just various ice skating dances like of the past Olympics and things like that, but there's one specifically of the Canadian ice dancers that they dance to a song from Moulin Rouge, and I've heard people say it might have been the author actually, that specific dance was a huge inspiration to her while writing this book. So yeah, I think she said in some interview that Wuthering Heights and that specific dance were like the largest parts of her inspiration for writing this book. So yeah.
And down to like they would talk about every song they danced to, like title, artist, talk about everything they were wearing. It was like to the point where people, I say people like the real, in the book during like the interview portion, it would be like interview slides them a photo and they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when this was taken, and I'm like, I want to see it. Yeah. Like I was like about to go look it up and it's not real. So I think the author, like Daisy Jones and the Six is purely interview format, so like that's impressive, but to do both is even more impressive in my opinion, because just she could convey like a documentary setting, but then her writing, you could just picture everything. It was
very well done.
So good.
I get the hype now.
Yeah. I didn't read that much, but I'd say I liked.
Yeah, that's good.
Loved all the books I read, which is so great.
Yeah. Okay. Those are all the books we read in February. And yeah, let us know your favorite book you read in February. Did you have any 5-star reads? Have you read the favorites? We can talk about the favorites if you want in the comment section.
We've got to tell that story.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for watching our video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye-bye.